Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes. Now, I don't normally sort of recommend or highlight television programs or anything like that, but this one I am. I'm making an exception because I think it will be most interesting. It's a documentary and it's called Salmond and Sturgeon, A Troubled Union. And there's a wonderful article in the Herald today, or I think it was yesterday. But I'm doing the reporting on it today, obviously. But it was some revelations that they're sort of leaking from this program. For example, John Swinney sold Sturgeon on the morning of the Brexit result not to go for another referendum. He said people won't wash. He said you had one in 2014, you have one again in 2016. People just don't want one. It's not the time for a plebiscite on this issue. And she, of course, disagreed. He, of course, at the time was the deputy leader. And it's part of that falling out process. She distanced herself from him quite quickly after that. But he said that voters wouldn't want to come out, for a third time so quickly on matters like that. He said there needed to be time, needed to be reflection. We needed to put the problem to bed, let it sit, let it go, and then come back later, rather than making this big issue. And of course, the big problem for Scotland was that having previously voted to remain in the UK, and therefore bound by the UK, which is what Scotland wanted, they didn't like it when the UK voted 52-48, I think, to leave the EU. Scotland was, I can't remember the exact number, but it was about 2/3, 1/3, or something like that. It was very, very strongly remain. But that's beside the point. Having previously decided to remain part of the UK, that's what happens. But that's democracy for you. But of course, Sturgeon isn't overly keen on democracy. And so even though the UK voted to leave the EU, she saw that as an excuse for another referendum on independence, even though only 2 years ago prior, people said, no, we want to stay. But she was very firm about this. Anyway, they had a big falling out about this, and this is why he got sort of elbowed out, bumped to the sidelines. And it's all there, but we know they don't really get on even to this day. But he also apparently told her in 2014 that Murrell must stand down, that there was concerns about the way he was running the party finances. 10 years ago they had these concerns. And he said that the combination between her being First Minister, Peter being the Chief Executive, it was going to be difficult. There was this nepotism, if you will, this illusion, even if it wasn't so, that there would be what's the word? A contradiction is not the word I'm really looking for here, but that choices would be made based on their relationship, not based on sound political principles, that sort of thing. Conflict of interest. That's the way there, and it was difficult. But she said, and her argument was, well, imagine Peter was the head of the party and I was the chief executive. Would you want the woman to stand down? Well, yes. You're the junior role. The junior role must go. It's got nothing to do with what sex you are. It's very weird. And of course, then it all comes out that Murrell's a crook, allegedly. Certainly going to court for it. And it's a very difficult situation when you have two people like this who really don't like each other, but they were going on. You have the issues over the whole of the following 2 years, when after Sturgeon sort of quit and Humza Yousaf took over, and there was that caused a lot of infighting in the party, and he was very much opposed to the way Nicola was still trying to run the party from behind the scenes. He said, and he's saying about the only reason he came back was there was literally no one else. I would suggest there was at least one other person, but it's anyone but Kate Forbes, isn't there? And it's just these whole things. I would love to know what Swinney thinks about about the sexual assault charges, because I don't think he was involved in that. I really don't. But it's just a toxic relationship between Nicola Sturgeon and everyone else, isn't it? They're all coming out. Salmond hates her. Swinney doesn't get on with her. Forbes loathes her. There's two big factions, and the losing faction don't like it. But this documentary, I think, will shine a light on and open a whole can of worms. I think it's definitely worth the watching, if only to see the reactions from their faces. But there's a lot coming out over this, and there's a lot of sexual shenanigans going on, and there's accusations, there's infighting. But we know this. We've covered all these things over the last few years, and something else will happen, and I'll be like, oh, well, you never guessed that this is going to happen, And then I realised that people, it's not really surprising if someone said that, this or the other happened. You'd be like, okay, it's terrible, but are you surprised? No, not really. We're just so used to it. We're being inculcated, and that sleaze, corruption, sexual assault, it's just the day-to-day norm for this party, isn't it? Nothing they do surprises anybody. What's surprising is the fact they're still there. And this is another thing. Yes, and that was the other thing. He was saying that because of her, how can we say, focused approach, to put it generously, alienated a lot of people within the party. He said he's tried to make it an open house again, to be more agreeable, to be, let's work with our colleagues in, as he calls them, our colleagues of all parties, as he describes them, because they're all in there, they're all in Holyrood together. He says we need to work with them all. But of course, with what Sturgeon has done, alienating everybody, nobody wants to work with the SNP. They don't want to play with them anymore because the SNP wouldn't play nicely. And now Swinney's desperate for this. Well, far too late, John. You shouldn't have taken over the mantle. You should have said, no, I was cast out, and now when you want me back, I should say no. Because he's going to sit there and watch a party die in its arse. Assuming he lasts long enough for that. I think it will probably be Stephen Flynn who'll watch the party die in its arse, but that's yet to come. But yeah, that thing. Salmon and Sturgeon, a divided union. That's the one to watch. I think it's on. Tonight. Might be on tonight. Check that out. Anyway, it's on soon. Thanks a lot. Take care, and till next time. Goodbye.